Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to make a heart-shaped vase in Blender that has ridges going around the edge of it, like the one that you're seeing here. And at the end of the video I'll show you how to make a curvy version of the vase as well. So we'll start with a new file and we'll press A to select everything and then delete to delete everything. Now I want to add a plane to the scene. This plane will not be part of the vase. We're going to use it for a guide, and exactly how that's going to work will become clear in a few minutes, but first let's just go ahead and add the plane. So before we do that, let's press 7 on the keyboard to go into top view and then click on add mesh and plane. That will add the plane into the scene. We'll press N on the keyboard. That will open up the side panel. Let's make sure we're in the item tab and come down to the dimensions section and set X to 17 and Y to 15. Go ahead and press period on the keyboard to zoom out a little bit. So this is our plane. I want it to be 17 units wide and 15 units long. And the reason for that is because that's the size that I want the heart shape to be. Now, since this is going to be a guide, I don't need to see the face. So just for now, we're going to switch over to wireframe view so that we can only see the outline of the plane. Now, if we look over here at the dimensions again, we'll notice that the units are in meters. I want this vase to be 17 centimeters wide by 15 centimeters long. So we want to convert our units to centimeters. We could also work in millimeters, but for this video we're going to work in centimeters. So we need to change the units of the scene. To do that, we're going to come over here to the side panel and make sure that we're on the scene tab. So if you're on some other tab, go ahead and click on the scene tab. And we need to expand the units section right here. So just click on that. Come down to length and change that to centimeters. If we look over here at the dimensions again for our plane, we can see that it is now 1700 centimeters by 1500 centimeters. And the reason for that is because it was originally 17 meters by 15 meters. And so there's 100 centimeters in a meter. Well, this isn't what we want. We want it to be 17 centimeters by 15 centimeters. So what we need to do is change the unit scale. So we're going to click in here, type 0.01 because 1 centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. And now you can see that our dimensions are correct for the plane. It is now 17 by 15 and the units are in centimeters. However, if we rotate out into perspective view, it looks like our grid has disappeared, but if we zoom out, we can see we still have the grid. It's just really large compared to our plane. To fix that, we're going to come up here to the overlays drop down and set the scale, this is the grid scale, to 0.01 as well. Okay, so that fixes our grid. If we go back into the top viewport and then press period, we'll zoom in on our plane if it's selected. So you have to select it first to zoom in on it with the period key. And so now we've got our guide plane and we've got our units fixed and we're ready to start modeling the heart shape. So we're going to use a path object to make our heart. And so let's go ahead and click on add, curve, and path. And so now we've got our path object here. Let's go ahead and tab into edit mode. And it has by default 5 vertices, which is exactly what we want. And they should all already be selected. If they're not, just go ahead and press A on your keyboard to select them all. Then we're going to rotate them -90 degrees. So press R and then -90 and then enter. Okay, now we're going to take this top vertex here, just click on it and come over here to the item tab again, and here in the Y value, let's go ahead and click in there and type 4.5. So this is going to be where the cleft of the heart is. And then we're going to click on the bottom point down here, and we're going to set its Y value to -7.5. That's going to put it down here at the bottom middle of our guide plane. We're going to box select the 3 middle points here, press G and X, and just move them out to the side, maybe about 4 units or so. We'll select this point, and we're going to set its X to -2. And we're going to set its Y value to whatever it is up here. I think this is maybe about 11. Let's see. Nope, let's do 10. So right there. So -2 and 10 for that one. And let's select this point, and we'll give it the same Y value. So type 10. And then we're going to select both of these like this. Press G. That way we can move them around, and then press X to lock them into the X axis, and just move them out until the side of the heart is touching the side of the plane. Now if we look, we can see that the heart is segmented looking, and that's because if we come over here to the data tab for the curve, it has a resolution of 12. So that means that the curve is made up of 12 segments. So let's put this to a really large number like 500. If your computer has problems with that, maybe do something like 200, but try to do 500 if you can. That's going to make that curve really smooth. Now ultimately our heart is going to come all the way around, so that's going to give us 500 segments for the entire heart. Right now it's giving us 500 segments for just the left side, but when we get done, the heart is going to go all the way around, and that way we'll have 500 segments all the way around. So it will be a really smooth heart all the way around. Okay, so after you smooth the curve out, you may need to adjust these. You can press G and X to adjust them, and just make sure that they approximately touch the side of the plane here. And then you can grab these top 2 points and press G and Y, and that will lock them into the Y axis, and just move them, adjust them as needed until the top of the heart is touching the top of the plane, approximately. It doesn't have to be exact. And then we can just leave this point right here as far as its Y value is concerned. So now we have the left side of the heart done, and we'll move on to making the other side of the heart. But before we do that, I just want to move this bottom vertex over a little bit. So let's go ahead and select that and change its X value to -0.5. And that will just move it over just a little bit. Now we're going to tab into object mode, and we're going to duplicate this curve. So we're going to press Shift D. That's going to create a duplicate. We have an opportunity to place this anywhere we want by clicking somewhere, but we really want it to be exactly over the original curve. And to do that, we can either press the right mouse button or escape on the keyboard. I am using a mouse, and I'm using a pen and tablet. So for me, it's going to be easier to press escape on the keyboard. But if you're using a mouse, you can just click the right mouse button. So now we have 2 curves here. We have NURBS path and NURBS path.001. We're just going to click here to select one of them. It doesn't matter which one gets selected. And what we're going to do now is scale it along the x-axis by -100%. That's going to make the duplicate act like a mirror over here. So we're going to press S for scale, and then X to lock it into the x-axis, and then we're going to press -1 and then enter. And so now that has that mirrored over on the right hand side. Now we need to join these 2 curves so that they're a single object. So we're going to press Shift and click to select the other curve as well, and then press Ctrl J to join them together. And then we need to connect them at the bottom here. So we're going to tab into edit mode, and we're just going to select these bottom two vertices and press F to fill between the two vertices, just like you would do if you were working with regular vertices on a mesh object. But this has, while it has connected them, it has changed the proportions of our heart quite dramatically. The first thing I want to do is pull these down so that the bottom of the heart is touching the bottom of the plane. So with these two vertices selected, we're going to press G so we can move them, and then Y to lock them into the Y axis. And we're just going to move that down until the bottom of the heart is touching the bottom of the plane. When we get near the bottom of the plane, we can hold down Shift to make our adjustments a little more refined. So about there. Now we're going to select these two vertices and then hold down Shift and select these two vertices. If you need to, you can move over a little bit to get away from your side panel here. And then we're going to scale them on the X axis. So we're going to press S and then X and scale them in so that the sides of the heart are touching the sides of the plane. So we're going to scale them in, and then when we get close to the sides of the plane, we're going to press and hold Shift to get a more refined movement, and then click. And then we're going to select the top four vertices and press G so we can move them, and then Y to lock into the Y axis. We're going to move them down until the top of the heart, the top of the two lobes of the heart, are touching the top of the guide plane. So we're going to pull down. When we get about here, we're going to press and hold Shift to get a more refined movement, and click. Okay, and so now we've got our heart done. What we want to do is just double check that all of us have the same direction. So it looks like the heart connects here, but really this is two separate vertices, okay, which is what we want. So the heart starts here and goes in this direction. It's unlikely, but possible, that some of you may have ended up with a heart that starts here and goes in this direction. To see which direction the curve goes in, we're going to come up here while we're in edit mode and click on this little drop down and turn on our curve normals. And you should get little arrows. I'm going to increase the size of mine a little bit so that you can see them better. But the arrow should point in this direction. So it's possible that they point in the other direction like this. If they do, you're going to need to press A to select all of the vertices and then click on segments and switch direction. So just make sure that the curve arrows are pointing in this direction. They're really called curve normals, but I'm going to call them arrows for now. When we're done, we can turn those back off because we don't need them anymore. And there we are through with the heart here. We can tab into edit mode and then delete this plane. Okay, and so we're done with our heart shape. So now we're going to move on to modeling the ridge object. But before we do that, this is probably a good time to save your work if you haven't already. So this heart is going to have 100 ridges going all the way around the outer edge. And what we're going to do now is model a single ridge. To do that, we're going to click on Add, Mesh, and Circle. We're going to open the Properties drop down here, and the number of vertices should be 32. If it isn't, go ahead and change it to 32. And you can set the radius to 1 if it isn't already set to 1. So, but it should be, by default, it should be 32 and 1, which is exactly what we want. Now, if you have a weaker computer, you can use 16 vertices for this circle instead of 32. You'll end up with a more faceted look on the final vase, but that's okay. Now I want to zoom in on this, so we're just going to press period on our number pad and it will zoom in on that. And that's a little too close, so I'm just going to zoom out with my scroll wheel on my mouse a little bit, and then we're going to tab into edit mode. And we're going to delete the bottom half of the circle. We'll go back into object mode, and add another circle, and we'll give this one 16 vertices, and we'll make it have a radius of 0.25. If you have a weaker computer, you can use 8 vertices for this circle. We'll tab into edit mode and this time delete the top half of this little circle, and then back into object mode, and we'll move this over to the left side of the larger circle. Then we'll duplicate it with Shift D and move the duplicate over here to the right side. Then we're going to come up here and turn on snapping, and we'll set our snap target type to vertex, and then click off, and we'll select this one and just grab it around in this area here and move it toward the end of the large circle, and it should snap the two ends together. And we'll do the same thing for this one, and then we're going to join these into a single object. So we're going to select the two little circles and then hold down shift, and well, we're going to select one, hold down shift, select the other, continue holding down shift, and then select the center one. It's important that you select the center one last, and so that it will be the active object, because when we join these together, the origin point of the active object is going to be the origin point of the new combined object, and we want that origin of the new object to be the center of the world. So after we've selected them, we're going to press Ctrl J. That's going to join them into a single object, and as you can see, the origin is at the center of the world, just like we want. Now I'm going to hit Ctrl Z. You don't have to do that, and I'm just going to do this again. I'm going to select them this time, selecting one of the little circles last, and you can see the origin is going to be over here when I press Ctrl J. Okay, so now the origin's over here. We don't want that. But if you accidentally got the origin over one of the little circles like that, you can come up to Object, Set Origin, Origin to 3D Cursor, and that will move the origin to the center of the world because our 3D cursor is in the center of the world. Something else you can do is press Ctrl A and apply the location, and that will also move the origin to the center of the world. So however you do it, you want to combine these three objects into a single object, and you want the origin to be in the center of the world. Now we're going to tab into edit mode, and where the two circles connect, we actually have separate vertices on both sides. So they're not connected there. We're going to press Ctrl Z to move those back into place. Also, I'm going to turn off snapping for now because it's actually kind of getting in my way right now. And what we're going to do is press A to select all of the vertices, and then we're going to come up to Mesh, Merge, and click on By Distance. And you can see down here it says it removed two vertices. So it got rid of the duplicate vertices, and now if we click here, you can see that we only have one vertex on each side there where the circles joined. Finally, what we want to do is trim off the end of this circle over here. So these last four vertices on this side, select them and delete them, and do the same thing on this side. So now we have a ridge object that can repeat, so it'll go like this, okay? So this is just the outer edge of the ridge object. We're going to model the rest of it a little later, but right now we're going to move on to adding the array and curve modifiers. So before we move on, this is probably a good place to save your work. But now what we're going to do is add the array modifier to the ridge, and then later the curve modifier. So first we'll add the array modifier. So with the ridge selected, we'll come over here and click on the modifiers tab, click on add modifier. Under the generate section, we're going to click on array. By default, it's going to give us a count of 3. I'm just going to bump that up to 5 for now. Later on, we're going to change that number to 100, but for now, we'll leave it at 5. Now we want to activate merge, and the reason for that is because everywhere where one of these, where these two ridges connect, there will be a duplicate vertex, and merge will remove that duplicate vertex for us. To get the ridges to flow along the heart, which is a curve, we'll need to use the curve modifier. So we're going to select the ridge object. We're going to go to add modifier. We're going to go to deform and then curve. Here where it says curve object, we're going to click here. We'll get a list of all of the available curve objects in the scene. This scene only has one curve object, which is the heart. So we'll go ahead and click on that. So now you can see that the ridges are going along the heart. We need to make changes to the ridges. So we will do that by tabbing into edit mode. But you can see that the ridges no longer appear along the heart when we tab into edit mode. To fix that, we're going to come here and click on this edit mode display button right here. And that way, while we're in edit mode, the ridges will still appear along the heart. That way we can make changes to the ridges and they will still go ahead and appear up here. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. Now you can see here it says deform axis X. That's referring to the X axis here, and you can think of the curve as being represented by the X axis, or as a stand-in for the X axis. So the position of the ridge object is going to be relative to the X axis is going to be the same as the position of the ridge object relative to the heart curve. I would like for the tops of the ridges to touch the curve, and to do that we're going to need to move the ridge here down so that the top of this ridge touches the top of the X axis. Because while in edit mode, if I select all of the vertices and press G and then Y and move that up or down, you can see how the ridges respond. So I'm going to hit escape, move in, zoom in quite a bit. I'm going to hit G and Y with all of the verts selected and just drag that down until it looks like the top of the ridge is touching the top of the X axis. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, just really close. And so now you can see that the tops of the ridges are touching the curve, the heart curve. So we're going to need to get these ridges to go all the way around the heart. We're going to need 100 of them. Before we dive into that though, one thing I think we're going to need to do is scale these ridges. And so when I scale them, I'm going to just click in here, press A and scale. As I scale it, you can see that the ridges are moving away from the heart curve. And so what's causing that is we're scaling toward the center of the ridge. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. We can fix that by changing our pivot point. So right now the pivot point is set to median point. That just means it's going to be roughly the middle of your selection. And so right now you would scale or move relative or rotate relative to the middle of whatever it is that you've selected. What we want to do is change that to 3D cursor. So now as I scale, we're scaling toward or away from the 3D cursor. Okay, so as I get smaller and smaller, the tops of the ridges stay stuck to the heart. Now I'm going to hit Control Z and we're going to go ahead and type 100 here in the array modifier. So now we have 100 ridges, but you can tell that the ridge is way too big and they're going way outside of the heart. So we're just going to sit here and scale this down over and over until we get these ridges roughly fitting correctly. So we're getting close, and right about there is about what we need. It doesn't have to be perfect at this moment. We're going to make several adjustments. Okay, so I want us to zoom in right here. Well, first, before we do that, I want you to know that if we press G and X and move this left or right, you can see how that affects the ridges, right? So as we move this way, the ridges move that way. I'm going to press Control Z. Now I want to zoom in. Keep all of your vertices selected and zoom in here to the cleft of the heart. I want to adjust where this first ridge starts. I want it to be a little further along the curve. So we're going to press G and X and just move it to the right like this. And what I want to do is do that until the end of this ridge right here is resting on this line that is about 1 unit below the point of the cleft. Okay, so that's going to put the ridge a good distance away from the y-axis. And so now what we need to do is scale the ridge so that the last ridge kind of mirrors this ridge right here. So we're going to hit S to scale, and we're going to scale toward the center of the world. That's going to make the ridge smaller. If your other ridge was up here, you could scale out, right? So you need to scale either to make the ridge smaller or to make it larger. But what we want to do is do this until the other ridge over on this side matches this ridge. So I'm going to hit scale again, and I'm going to hold shift so we can make smaller movements. And right about there, I might zoom in a little bit more here. So I want to get these resting on that line. So I'm going to hit G and X and move to the right while holding shift. And that's going to move this right here. And it looks like that's about right? So I might could scale a little bit up, but it's really already about correct. So that's about as good as we can do that. Now we're going to zoom out a little bit. We're going to keep our vertices selected. We're going to move down to the bottom of the heart and zoom in here to the middle of this recess quite a bit. And so you can see here, when we're this zoomed in, we can easily see the segments. We want the y-axis to run through where these two segments meet. Right now it's a little bit to the side. So we're going to hit G and X. And this time, because we're on the other side of the curve, we need to move in the opposite direction. So I'm going to hold down Shift and move this way until we get that point right there in line with the y-axis. And now we can zoom out. We'll go ahead and tab out into object mode and just press the period. That will zoom us out quickly so that we are looking at the whole heart now. And so we've got the outside of the ridge modeled and scaled down. And now what we're going to do is model the rest of the ridge. So let's go ahead and tab back into edit mode and press period on our number pad. That'll zoom back into our ridge. And then I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. What we want to do is select the two outer vertices of the ridge, press E to extrude and Y to constrain ourselves to the y-axis, and just come down to this line right here, which is about -0.4. So -0.39 or -0.41, somewhere in that area. Then we're going to type F to fill, and then we're going to hold our mouse over the center of this and press Control R. That's going to cut that. We want 5 cuts, so type 5 on your number pad and then press enter. If you have a weak computer, you could do 3 cuts here instead of 5. Now select all of the vertices and press F to fill that with an end gone. And then select this group of vertices, and let's go ahead and make it exactly -0.4. And then let's press E to extrude and Y to constrain to the y-axis and pull down 2 more units right here, and I want that to be exactly -0.6, so -0.6. Okay, so this whole piece is approximately 0.6 centimeters tall or 6 millimeters tall. And if we tab out into object mode and press period, we can see now that our heart has some thickness to it. Right now it's in wireframe mode, so let's go ahead and switch over to solid view to see that better. So now we have our ridge, we have it modeled, we have it arrayed so it goes around the heart, And what we need to do next is model this a little connection here to connect the top here at the cleft of the heart. And that's going to require us to apply the array and curve modifiers. So before we do that, it would definitely be a good idea to save your work. So let's go ahead and apply the array modifier and then the curve modifier. Now it's very important that you apply them in the order that they are. I'm going to hit Control Z and just show you what happens. If we apply the curve modifier first, it's going to look like this. So I'm going to hit Control Z and be sure to apply the array modifier first and then the curve modifier. So after we do that, this is now an actual object. It's no longer just the ridge object, it's the whole heart object, okay? And we just need to model a connection up here. So we're going to zoom in up here between at this space at the cleft of the heart. I'm going to zoom in quite a bit, and then we're going to select these three vertices on the left and these three vertices on the right. We're going to come up to edge, bridge edge loops, and we're going to start increasing the number of cuts. Okay, you might not get good results with blend path. You can get, sometimes it turns out good, sometimes it turns out a little strange. So let's change that to blend surface, and you'll get usually get a fairly nice result. Now right now it's kind of pointed, which could be what you're looking for. You might like that. So it's the smoothest version of this. But if you would like that to kind of round out a little bit, you can just reduce the amount of smoothness. So maybe something like that. 0.85 is what I have here. And now we want to keep increasing the cuts until this edge, the length of from here to here, is about the same or maybe even slightly smaller than the distance from this point to this point. So we're just going to keep increasing the cuts, maybe to about there. So 19, let's go ahead and do 21. Now it has to be an odd number of cuts. If we do 20, which is even, we don't have a center line here. So we're going to go to 21 so that we get a center line there. Okay, so now we've got that connection modeled. We can tab out to object mode and maybe press period on the number pad. And now we have the kind of base of our heart completely modeled. So before we move on to the next part, this is another good place to save your work. All right, what we're going to do now is extrude the vase upwards. And before we do that, I want to come up here to the overlays and turn on face orientation. So what we don't want to see is red, and right now we are seeing red. What that means is we are looking at the back of this heart. If we look at it at the underside of it, it's gray, which means that this is the front of the heart. We want to reverse that so that it's gray on top and red on the bottom. Now it's possible that you're at this stage and the heart is gray for you when you turned on face orientation, and if that's the case, you don't have to do anything. It's already correct. Sometimes it works out that the faces are facing upward, sometimes it works out that they are facing downwards. So we're going to select the heart, tab into edit mode. We're going to select all of them by pressing A on the keyboard. We're going to come up to mesh and click on normals and click on flip. Okay, so if we click off now, you can see that the faces are gray and underneath is red, and that's how we want it. Okay, now we're going to press A to select all of the vertices again. We're going to press E to extrude, and then we're going to type 0.6 and press enter. That will extrude it up by a distance of 0.6. While all of the vertices are selected, we're going to press E again to extrude up. We're going to pull up a little bit and click, and then come over here and type 15 in the Z slot here. That'll make the vase 15 centimeters tall. Now, some people at this stage, I'm going to hit Control Z a couple of times. They may have gotten here, and you may have accidentally clicked off, and it can be very difficult to select all of these top faces again. You can get this ring pretty easily by switching to face select and double clicking on an edge there, but you can't get this ring. If you select this one and press Control plus, you will get the top faces, but you will also get these on the side. So to fix that, what you can do if you lost your selection here is click on one of these faces, click on select, select similar, and then click on normal, and it will select all of the faces that are pointing in the same direction as the original face that you selected. And so then at this point, you would press E, pull up a little bit, come over here and type 15 in the Z slot. Okay, so what you should have now is kind of a heart-shaped tube with ridges around it, and that is 15 centimeters tall. I want to come here, zoom in on this line right here, and go into vertex select, and just double click on an edge between two vertices here to select that entire ring. Press delete and dissolve edges. So we want to get rid of those edges right there. Now what we need to do is model the bottom of the vase. So we're just going to move up, roll up here. So we're looking at the bottom and just zoom in. And what we want to do now is select all of these faces. So we're going to go back to face select mode, and underneath this line here that goes like that, we want to select a double click on an edge between two faces down here. So double click, and it will select that entire ring of faces, which we then want to press delete and then click on faces. So we just want to delete all of those faces. We can move over to edge select mode and just double click here on one of these edges, and it will select the edges all the way around. Press F to fill that with a giant N-gon, and then we can do the same thing down here. Double click on one of these edges to select all of those, and press F to fill that with a giant N-gon. Okay, and so now we have our vase roughed in. I'm going to tab back into edit mode, or object mode rather. And so we have a vase with straight sides, and the next thing that we're going to do is model the bevels on the edges. And at this point I would save my work before we move on to modeling those bevels. So I want two different sizes of bevels. I want a fairly large bevel here along the bottom, and then up here at the top along this edge and along the edge that has the ridges at the top and the bottom, I want a small bevel. We'll start off by modeling the large bevel here at the bottom of the vase. So let's tab into edit mode and then come up here and switch to face select and click on the large face down here at the bottom of the vase, and then I'm going to zoom in a bit, and we can press Control B and just pull back a little bit and then click, and you can see our bevel starting to form there. We'll get this properties panel that will pop up right here where it says width. Let's go ahead and change that to 0.25 and hit enter, and then here for segments let's set that to 8 and hit enter. Okay, so you can see now that we have modeled our large bevel down here at the bottom of the vase. We'll go ahead and tab into object mode and zoom back out. To model the rest of the bevels, we're going to use the bevel modifier. So we're going to come over here to the side panel, go to the modifiers tab, click on the add modifier button. Here under generate, we're going to find the bevel modifier right here. Now I'm going to zoom in real close on this section of the vase, but you don't have to do that. I'm just doing that so that in the video we can very easily see the effects that the bevel modifier is having. Okay, so without the bevel modifier it would look like this. And I'm going to turn it back on, and this is what it looks like with the bevel modifier. You can see it creating a bevel already. We're going to change some of the settings over here. I would like the amount to be 0.05. Now when I change that size, nothing happened. And that makes me feel like our clamp overlap is kicking in. So under the geometry section here, you can expand that and find the clamp overlap. We can turn that off. So normally you want to leave clamp overlap on. What that does, if I understand it correctly, is sometimes when you're making a bevel, the larger it gets, it'll hit a certain size where some vertices begin to overlap. And this is supposed to prevent that by preventing the bevel from getting that big. I don't know why it's kicking in at this point, because so far as I could tell, the vertices are not overlapping on this bevel. But we're going to turn it off. You can see that when it's on, the bevel is slightly smaller. When it's off, the bevel is slightly larger. I'm going to set this back just temporarily to 0.1. You can see it's quite a bit larger now without the clamp overlap. So if I turn clamp overlap on, it gets quite small at 0.1. If I turn it off, it gets quite large. And so we're going to put it back to 0.05. We're going to set the number of segments to 4. And then we're just going to go ahead and apply the modifier. So that went ahead and put a bevel here on the outside of the top, the inside of the top, and it also placed one here at the bottom as well. Now I would say that normally you would, in many cases you would not apply the bevel modifier. You would go ahead and just leave it active on your model. But in this case, it's going to work out better for us to go ahead and apply it. Now we want to use a lattice modifier to affect the shape of the vase. There is an old way to do this and a new way that is become available starting with Blender 5.0. So just in case we still have people who have older versions of Blender, I'm going to show both ways. Both ways will work in Blender 5.0 and up, but the new way is a lot faster and easier, but only available starting in Blender 5.0. So if you've got Blender 5.0, just hold on for a couple of minutes while I go over this process for the earlier versions of Blender, and then I'll show you what to do in Blender 5.0 in a couple of minutes. So if you don't have Blender 5.0 or above, you have to first add a lattice object. And in the older versions, I think just clicking here would add the lattice object, but now we have a sub-menu. I'm going to pick lattice from this. And it doesn't look like anything's happened, but there is a lattice object that's been added to the scene. And we can affect the size here, but only it will be the same size all the way around. So for instance, we could type in 17 here, and it would make it 17 centimeters wide. So it would fit the width of our model. Now, an interesting thing about lattices is that you don't change the dimensions, you change the scale. And if we go, well, first of all, it's not vertically over the vase. To fix that, we need to change the Z location to 7.5, which is half of 15. And then you can see that it's a little too tall. Well, that's because in the Z direction, it should only be 15 centimeters tall. So we'll change the Z to 15. If we switch to the side view by pressing 3, we can see it's too long in this direction. It's also 15 centimeters in the Y direction. Now there is a small gap here, and we can just maybe, you don't have to do this, but maybe just type 0.02 in the Y location here, just to move that over a little bit. Okay, so we now have our lattice around our vase. Now we need to add the lattice modifier to the vase. So we're going to select the vase itself. Come over here to add modifier. So make sure you're in the modifier tab. Click on add modifier. Under deform, find the lattice modifier. And so now the vase has the lattice modifier, but we need to select the lattice. So here under object, just click on that. It will give you a list of all the available lattices in the scene. In this case, there's only one, so we're just going to go ahead and click on that. And now we could use this lattice to start deforming the vase. However, what I'm going to do is delete this lattice. I'm going to delete the modifier and show you what to do if you have version 5. So if you have version 5 and up, you just need to select the vase, come up here to add, lattice, lattice deform selected. It will automatically create the lattice. It will make it the correct size. It will put it in the correct location. And if you click on the vase, you can see that it automatically adds the modifier and automatically selects the new lattice as the object to do the deformations. Okay, so one mouse click to do all of the things that we used to have to do manually. It's a lot easier, but either way, it brings you to the same place. You have a lattice that can deform the vase. To deform the vase, we're going to select the lattice. I'm going to go into front view by pressing 1 on the keypad. You're going to tab into edit mode for the lattice and then select the vertices of the lattice. And in this case, I'm going to press S for scaling. Now you can see it's scaling up. I don't want that, so I'm going to hit escape. That's happening because we set the transform pivot point up here to 3D cursor earlier. So we need to change that back to median point. So right now it's scaling in relation to the 3D cursor. With median point, it's going to scale within reference to the center point of the selection. So this is our selection. If we go into perspective view, this is our selection up here. So it would scale relative to the center point of these 4 points. So now I'm going to hit S to scale, and you can see that it's not scaling up anymore. However, there is this sort of offset happening where it's not affecting it directly. Also, it's deforming down here. I want it to fill this shape exactly, and to do that, we're going to tab back into object mode for this lattice. We're going to come over to the data tab for the lattice, and here under interpolation, we're going to change the interpolation method to linear for all 3 directions. Okay, U, V, and W. And you can see now that the vase is filling in the lattice perfectly, and if we change the shape of it, it responds to the lattice, very exactly. Okay, so you can just scale up the top. That's going to give you the that kind of slanted shape that I showed in the very beginning of the video. And once you've done that, you can hide the lattice. We can also hide that heart path so we don't see it down there. Okay, so this is the vase. It's done. One more thing that I can show is how to make a curvy version of this vase. So if you're interested in that, you can hang around, or you can consider yourself done because we have finished this version of the vase. But some people might want to make it, very curvy, and I'll show you how to do that next. So let's bring back the lattice and let's go ahead and select it. We'll come down here to the data tab and just give the lattice more cuts this direction. So here in the W direction, we'll just bump that up to 5. And we'll go ahead and tab into edit mode. We'll select these vertices and scale them in. You can see that nothing happens. The reason that nothing is happening is because we don't have enough geometry on the sides of the vase. So I'm going to tab into object mode and hide that lattice for now. We're going to select the vase, go to modifiers. Let's turn off the lattice modifier and let's tab into edit mode. If you have a weaker computer, I recommend that you save your work before adding the geometry to the sides of the vase, because this operation is going to exponentially increase the number of vertices in the model and could potentially crash Blender in some weaker computers. So to add geometry to the sides of the vase, we're going to press Ctrl R in edit mode. We'll get this single line, and then we can type a number for however many cuts we would like to have vertically. So if you have a weak computer, you might want to do something like 60. I'm going to go ahead and type in 100, and I'm going to hit enter. It's going to take my computer a few moments to process that. After it does, I have a chance to move my mouse up or down and then click to choose where I want those loop cuts to be in the vase. But I actually want them centered vertically, and to do that, if you're using the mouse, you would press the right mouse button. You can also press the escape key on the keyboard, which is what I'm going to do because I'm using a pen and tablet. So I'm just going to press escape, and that's going to lock those in to their centered position. Then we're going to come into the inside of the vase and do the same thing. Control R. We're going to type in a number. You don't need quite as many loop cuts on the inside of the vase because you have the floor down here. So the distance from the top to the bottom of the inside of the vase is a little less than the distance from the top to the bottom on the outside. So we could get by with fewer loop cuts. I'm going to type 80. If you put 60 on the outside, you could maybe do 50 on the inside. I'm going to hit enter. And then after that processes, I'm going to press escape. And so now we have all of these, we have all this geometry now on the sides of the vase, both on the inside and the outside. So we'll tab back into edit mode, or object mode rather, and turn the lattice back on. And then we'll also turn on the lattice modifier. Now the minute we do, you can see that now the vase is conforming to the lattice, but it's very angular. Well, that's a problem of the lattice. We're going to click on the lattice, come down to the data tab for the lattice, and we're going to change the interpolation from linear back to B-spline for all three directions. Okay, so now we can select the lattice and tab into edit mode, and we could make it curvy however we might think is best. Okay, so you can do all kinds of things with the curvature. So a cool thing about the and I'm not going to really work too hard on making this very curvy, but we could scale this out, or you could scale this further in, or whatever you think might be best. Okay. A cool thing about the lattices, we could make another one. So I'm going to select the vase and click add lattice deform selected. It's going to make another lattice. I'm going to select the vase, come over here. So it is applying the first lattice and then the second lattice, and the second lattice has no deformation, so it's not affecting it at all. But I actually don't want this second modifier. I want to go ahead and delete that. I just wanted the lattice. Okay, so let's take this and come to the data tab, and we will change the interpolations to linear again, and we'll tab into edit mode and grab those top vertices and scale them out, something like this. Tab back into object mode, and we can hide these two lattices, both of them. Select the vase, come to our lattice modifier, and we can switch between the two lattices. Okay, so that's the cool thing about lattice modifiers. Okay, you can change the lattice that is affecting it. You can also stack multiple lattice modifiers to get various effects. And something else you can do that I almost forgot to show you is we can turn on that original lattice and select it, come over here to the data tab, and you can add more cuts to the other directions. So for instance, we could add another loop cut in this direction, and if we go into the side view and select the lattice and tab into edit mode, we can grab those two vertices up there and pull them up. And you don't always have to be symmetrical with it either. So you could do something like that, or you could scale it a little wider in the middle if you wanted to. And you can of course add loop cuts in the other direction as well if you wanted to. So maybe you could pull that out like that or something. But anyway, you can go crazy with lattices. All right, we're going to go ahead and hide that, and there we go. We got a curvy vase now. Okay, I want to talk about rendering for just a few moments. This video isn't really about rendering, so I just want to throw in a few tips in case somebody out there wants to render this. So I intended it more for 3D printing. And so you have these kind of ridges here, or facets, and if you want to render it, you don't want to see these facets. So what you can do is just select the vase and turn on Shade Smooth. Okay, there's a little bit of an issue here. We might be able to fix that with an extra loop. So just come up here to the top, right about here, and just put an extra loop, maybe right there. We'll try it in the center. Yeah, so that seems to have corrected that for us, or at least made it better. Maybe another one. Between those two. There is maybe a little bit of oddness in each of these areas. It doesn't seem too bad though. It's worse on this end, I think. Looks like there's like a little notch over here. I don't know if I could totally get rid of that. We can try going into edit mode and selecting one of these faces here and select similar. Let's try similar area. That'll get all of those, and let's try shading those flat. Let's see if that helps. I think that did. Yeah. So, and let's just look at the, with the other lattice. So we'll go over here and switch the lattices to the other lattice. And for this one, maybe the changes we made fixed it. I think so. Yeah, I think it looks fine. Now maybe on the bottom we might have an issue, and if we do, it's not too bad. But if you feel like there's an issue, like maybe some pinching or something, you can just go and select this bottom face and press Ctrl+ a couple times. You can do this with both lattices. Just do face, shade flat. So what we're doing is we're shading most of the vertices, or rather most of the faces, we're shading smooth, which means that the normals get averaged across several faces, and then for some of these upper and bottom faces we're shading flat, just to get rid of some shading issues. Okay, Okay, and that's just a few tips for making the mesh better prepared for rendering. Now we're not going to go over making materials or anything like that. I just wanted to help people, get the mesh ready for rendering in case there's a few people out there who wanted to render the model. All right, that is it for this video. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope to see all of you in future videos.